The valley was a kill box. That is the only way to describe it. The sound of a DSK heavy machine gun is distinct. It doesn't just bang, it chugs. It sounds like a jackhammer tearing through concrete, but in this case, it was tearing through the cover of a pinned-down ranger platoon. Dirt, shale, and blood sprayed into the air. "Suppressing fire! Get some guns up!" screamed Master Sergeant Bricks Dalton, his voice cracking over the roar of battle. He was a mountain of a man, a veteran ranger whose face was currently caked in gray dust and fresh blood from a grazing wound on his forehead. But there was no suppressing that gun. It was positioned 1,200 meters up the ridgeline, dug into a cave mouth that offered perfect defilade. It was raining hell down on the American position. Crouched behind a crumbling rock wall, trembling, was Corporal Maya Vance. She shouldn't have been this close to the fight. She wasn't a door kicker, she wasn't a trigger puller. Maya was an armorer, a glorified mechanic in the eyes of the operators around her. She was barely 5'4", with messy blonde hair tucked under a helmet that looked 2 sizes too big. Her hands, usually covered in gun oil and grease, were currently shaking as she clutched a field repair kit to her chest. She had been brought along on this mission strictly for logistics, to service the heavy weapons at the forward operating base. But the convoy had been hit, and now she was in the dirt with the shooters. "Get your head down, Vance," Dalton roared, grabbing her vest and yanking her lower as a round shattered the rock inches from her face. "Stay out of the way. You're a liability out here. Do you hear me? Just don't get killed." Maya squeezed her eyes shut. She was the weak link. The mouse, that's what they called her back at base. Quiet, small, always staring at the floor when the big pipe hitters walked into the armory. She was the one they bullied when their optics were a millimeter off, blaming her for their missed shots. Right now, she felt smaller than ever. The platoon was dying, and she was just a girl with a wrench. Before we continue this intense story, just take a second, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which country are you watching this video from. I'd love to know where our community is. Maya Vance was invisible. That was her superpower, or so it seemed. She had joined the military looking for a purpose, but her small frame and quiet demeanor had pigeonholed her immediately. The recruiters pushed her towards support roles. The instructors spoke over her. By the time she reached her unit, she was the gear girl. The Rangers and SEALs she serviced saw her as part of the furniture. She fixed the jams, she cleaned the carbon, she calibrated the lasers. When she tried to speak up about ballistics or windage during briefings, she was usually met with a scoff. "Stick to the cleaning fluid, mouse," Sergeant Dalton had told her just 2 days ago. "Leave the shooting to the men who actually leave the wire." What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Maya Vance didn't learn about rifles from a manual. She grew up in the deep, rolling hills of Appalachia. Her father wasn't just a hunter, he was a competitive long-range shooter, a man who could shave the wings off a fly at 300 yards. Maya hadn't played with toys, she had played with scope turrets. By the time she was 12, she could judge wind speed by the way the grass rippled. By 16, she was out shooting grown men in state competitions, hitting targets so far away they were invisible to the naked eye. She understood the math of a bullet, the rotation of the earth, the humidity, the spin drift. Every night at the base, after the operators went to the mess hall, Maya would take the rifles that she had fixed out to the test range. Under the cover of darkness, she would verify her repairs. But she didn't just function check them. She sent rounds through the same hole over and over at distances that would make a qualified sniper sweat. But she never told anyone. She was afraid of the mockery. She was afraid they wouldn't believe her. Back in the valley, the situation had gone from catastrophic. "Where is Viper? Where is our sniper element?" Dalton screamed into his radio. "Viper is down. I repeat, Viper 2-1 is down." The crackle in his ear was terrifying. The platoon's designated sniper team had taken a direct hit from an RPG in the opening volley. Staff Sergeant Miller was unconscious, bleeding out behind a boulder 10 yards to Maya's left. His stalker was dead. The DSK on the ridge hammered again. Thump, 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 thump. 2 more Rangers collapsed, screaming. The heavy rounds were chewing through the cover. They were sitting ducks. If that gun wasn't silenced in the next 60 seconds, the entire unit would be wiped out. "Air support is 10 minutes out," the RTO yelled, panic rising in his voice. "We don't have 10 minutes," Dalton roared. He grabbed his carbine and popped up to fire, but the range was too great. His 5.56 rounds couldn't reach the cave effectively. He cursed and slammed back against the rock. "We need a sniper. Someone get on Miller's gun." A young private tried to crawl towards the fallen sniper's rifle, a heavy Mk-21, a precision sniper rifle chambered in .338 Lapia Magnum. But as soon as the private moved, rounds kicked up the dirt around him, forcing him back. "I can't get to it, Sarge. The angle is too tight." Dalton looked around, his eyes wild. He saw fear in his men's faces. They were tough elite warriors, but they were being dismantled by a weapon they couldn't touch. Maya looked at Staff Sergeant Miller. She looked at the rifle lying in the dirt next to him. The .338 Lapia. It was a monster of a gun. She had just calibrated the scope on that specific rifle yesterday. She knew exactly how the trigger broke. She knew the barrel harmonics. Maya looked at Dalton. He was busy reloading, shouting orders that were becoming futile. Maya didn't think. She didn't ask for permission. The fear that had paralyzed her moments ago evaporated, replaced by a cold, mathematical calculation. She dropped her repair kit. "Vance, stay put," Dalton shouted as he saw her move. "What the hell are you doing?" Maya ignored him. She didn't crawl like a frightened animal anymore. She low-crawled with perfect form, slithering through the dust towards the fallen sniper. "Vance, get back here!" Dalton's voice was filled with rage and terror. He didn't want to watch the armorer girl get cut in half. Maya reached the rifle. She grabbed the heavy weapon and dragged it back behind the cover of the rock wall, moving it just enough to get a firing line through a gap in the stones. "Are you insane?" Dalton grabbed her shoulder. "Put that down. You don't know how to use that system." Maya shrugged his hand off. The gesture was so sharp, so authoritative that Dalton actually froze. She pulled the bolt back, checking the chamber. Clear. She slapped a fresh magazine in. She settled the bipod into the dirt. "Range?" she asked. Her voice wasn't shaking. It was flat, dead calm. Dalton stared at her. "What?" "Range to target, Sergeant," Maya said, her eye already glued to the scope. She was adjusting the parallax. "Give me the range." Dalton looked at her, then at the ridge. He was too shocked to argue. He pulled out his laser rangefinder. 1,240 meters, high angle, 12 degrees elevation. Maya's mind became a computer. 1,240 meters. The air was thin and hot. That meant the bullet would fly flatter. The wind was coming from the left, gusting through the valley floor but likely swirling at the peak. She watched a piece of fabric fluttering on a dead bush near the target. Left to right, maybe 8 miles per hour. She dialed the elevation turret. Click, click, click. She didn't dial the wind. She would hold for it. "It's a DSK," Dalton said, his voice low. "If you miss, he sees the flash and he turns that gun on us." "I know," Maya whispered. Through the scope, the world was magnified 25 times. She saw the muzzle flash of the enemy machine gun. She saw the gunner's head bobbing behind the shield. It was a tiny target, a grapefruit at 3/4 of a mile. Maya exhaled. She employed the breathing technique her father had taught her. Inhale, exhale, pause. The world went silent. The shouting faded. The explosions dulled. There was only the crosshair and the heartbeat in her thumb. She applied pressure to the trigger. Smooth, steady. Crack. The rifle kicked hard, slamming into her small shoulder, sending a puff of dust into the air. The flight time of the bullet was nearly 2 seconds. 1, 2. Dalton was watching through his binoculars. He saw the enemy gunner's head snap back violently. A mist of pink vapor appeared against the dark rock of the cave. The heavy machine gun fell silent instantly. "Target down," Dalton whispered, disbelief coloring every syllable. The rangers along the wall looked at Maya. They looked at the girl they called Mouse. She was already cycling the bolt, chambering another round. 2 more combatants moving to the gun, Maya said calmly. Crack. Another second of silence. "Hit," Dalton said. "Center mass! Holy!" Crack. "Third target down. The gun is unmanned," Maya announced. She took her eye off the scope and looked at Dalton. Her face was covered in grime, but her eyes were fierce. "What's next, Sergeant?" The tide had turned. With the heavy guns silenced, the Rangers could move. They began to return fire, suppressing the lighter infantry on the ridge. But the enemy wasn't done. "Technical! 3 o'clock! 3 o'clock!" From a ravine on the far right flank, a modified pickup truck roared into view. It was moving fast, bouncing over the rough terrain. Mounted on the back was a recoilless rifle, a cannon capable of blowing their cover to pieces. "They're flanking us!" the RTO screamed. "They have a clear shot!" The truck was moving at 40 miles per hour, 800 meters out, bouncing violently. Hitting a stationary target at distance is hard. Hitting a fast-moving vehicle at distance is reserved for the best of the best. "I can't get a lock!" a ranger with a rocket launcher yelled. "It's moving too fast!" If that truck reached the ridge, they were dead. She shifted her position. She had to traverse the rifle. She didn't have good footing. She had to twist her body, destabilizing her platform. "Vance, that truck is moving too fast!" Dalton yelled. "Suppress it!" "No. If I suppress it, they just stop and fire. I have to kill the engine." "That's an impossible shot!" Maya ignored him. She was doing the math again. Lead time. The truck was moving left to right. At that distance, she had to aim meters in front of the truck. She had to predict where it would be when the bullet arrived. She didn't look at the truck. She looked at the empty space in front of it. She tracked the movement. She swung the heavy barrel, matching the speed of the vehicle. She needed to hit the engine block, a target the size of a microwave, moving over bumps, half a mile away. She felt the rhythm of the truck bouncing. Bounce, land, bounce, land. She timed the shot for the bottom of the bounce. Crack! The rifle roared. Everyone held their breath. For a moment, nothing happened. The truck kept moving. "Miss!" someone shouted. Then, suddenly, white steam exploded from the hood of the truck. The vehicle veered sharply to the right, the front axle seizing up. It flipped once, twice. It crashed into a ravine and detonated as the ammunition on board cooked off. A massive fireball erupted into the sky. Silence fell over the valley. The enemy infantry, seeing their heavy support destroyed by what they assumed was a sniper team of gods, broke contact and fled. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" Dalton ordered. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the heavy breathing of men who had just cheated death. Slowly, one by one, heads turned toward the rock wall where their armorer sat. Maya was trembling again. The adrenaline dump was hitting her. She pushed the heavy rifle away and pulled her knees to her chest, reverting to the quiet girl they knew. She wiped her nose with a greasy glove. Master Sergeant Dalton stood up. He walked over to her. His boots crunched loudly in the gravel. The other rangers gathered around. No one said a word. Dalton looked down at her. He looked at the smoking rifle. He looked at the burning truck in the distance. He dropped to one knee so he was eye level with her. The man who had mocked her, who had told her to stick to cleaning fluid, reached out and gently took the helmet off her head. "Corporal Vance," he said, his voice raspy but filled with a new, profound respect. Maya looked up, expecting a reprimand for disobeying orders. I'm sorry, Sergeant. I know I wasn't supposed to touch the—" "Shut up, Maya," Dalton said softly. He unvelcroed the support patch from her shoulder. He threw it into the dirt. Then he reached into his own pocket and pulled out a tab, a sniper tab he kept as a memento. He pressed it into her hand. "You saved this entire platoon," Dalton said. He looked around at his men. "Verify?" "Hoo-ha!" The Rangers roared in unison, a thunderous sound of approval. "I have never seen shooting like that. Not in training, not in combat. You aren't a maintainer, Mance. You're a reaper." He offered her a hand. Maya took it, and he pulled her to feet. "When we get back to base," Dalton said, grinning through the blood on his face, "you're not cleaning weapons anymore. You're going to be teaching us how to use them." Maya looked at the men. The bullying, the dismissal, the feeling of being invisible, it was gone. She wasn't the mouse anymore. She stood tall, her hidden talent finally revealed in the fire of battle. She adjusted her gear, nodded to the sergeant, and for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. Before you go, tell us in the comments which country are you watching this video from? And don't forget to subscribe to Her Force Tales for more incredible stories, and hit like, share, and comment to support the channel.